Hello learners, in this lecture we are going to understand historical development of community work in the West and India. Myself Dr. Sudhir Maske, I am assistant professor in Department of Social Work, University of Delhi. So before going to understand the history of community work practice in West and India, we need to understand the importance of community work in social work profession. As we know that community work, community organization, we consider as one of the core method of social work profession. Therefore, we need to understand how this method developed in Western countries, particularly in UK and USA. And later on, we will also try to understand the history of community work practice in India. So, in this lecture, we'll try to learn the importance of community work in social profession. We'll also try to understand the historical development of community work in UK and USA. We'll also try to understand the historical development of community work in India. And finally, we'll conclude this lecture with some important points. Let us try to understand how the community work has originated. As we know that the community work or working with community, mostly we have seen as an humanitarian work to help local people to address socio-economic needs. In a broad sense, we can say that the history of community work practice is as old as the history of mankind. Wherever people have lived together, as we know that some form of organization emerged and functioned in order to achieve some common goals or to meet certain common needs of the community. Gradually, we can see with the informal and formal organization, we must have been set up to give more formal shape and to form such initiatives of social welfare. The first efforts of the community organization for the social welfare were initiated in the UK during 19th century. As you know that the social work profession itself emerged during the era of industrialization, where many people were migrated from rural areas to urban localities. They settled, and because of their new settlements, there were a lot of issues were emerging, particularly destitutions, poverty, beggary. These kind of issues were upcoming. To address these issues, some of the important organizations came forward and they started directly working with these people. So we can say that the genesis of community work practice was emerged in the UK, and it was shaped by the philanthropic motives, particularly of the missionary work which led by the various church-based organizations or the missionary organizations. Later on, we can also see the history that London Society for Organizing Charitable Relief Organization, it was formed to facilitate relief work and rendering other services through community interventions. So, during this era, the community practitioners were organizing the poor, collecting funds to meet their basic needs, enabling them to lead some moral lives through education, and assimilating them into the English society. That's how these community practitioners, they were trying to address people's needs and making interventions for their welfare and well-being. Another important milestone we can trace in the Western history, that in 88 the settlement house movement was originated in England, and this settlement house movement were catering the needs of the rural migrated poor people who were settled in cities in the areas of food, shelter, health, and education. During this time, the social work professors from the different schools and students, they were also addressing these needs of the slum dwellers through neighborhood approach. And that's how the charity organization society and serving neighborhoods through settlement houses had their impact in the UK and later on in the United States, which maintained very close link with the England uh, based organizations. Now, as we understood the history of community work practice, how it was started in UK. Now we'll try to understand how this work was emerged or initiated in USA, in the United States of America. In 1880s, charity organization society emerged and started their work in USA. Even the settlement house movement was also started their work in USA around 1886. And same, the neighborhood approach, they were also catering the needs and problems of the poor immigrants, those who were migrated from Europe and settled in urban colonies. With this background, in early 20th century, community councils were also established in United States of America. And through these councils, the community work practitioners, social workers, they were trying to increase the efficiency, they were trying to increase specializations, and they were also setting certain standards for services and providing leadership to member agencies for joint planning, and even they were addressing the needs of the local people. Later on, during the World War First, gave rise to the war chests in many communities to promote central fundraising, coordination of services, and control of spending. And that's how the community organization practitioners were employed in community councils during this period, and thus the community organization during this era was looked upon as working with member agencies and not directly with the communities, because these community work practitioners were hired by the community councils and these agencies. Then the community organization method, again it was equated with the coordination. The community work practitioners, they were raising standards of services, they were collecting and distributing funds and supervising spending during 1950s and in early 60s. And that's how the role of community practitioners were becoming more visible in this time. Gradually, as we know that slowly the welfare responsibilities were shifted from voluntary effort to the public welfare departments of the governments, and the wider use of community organization was further restricted due to the preoccupation of the social work profession with casework practice. As we know that the Mary Richmond wrote Social Diagnosis in 1970. Later, she wrote a book called Social Casework, and even these caseworkers, they were addressing the needs and the issues faced by the people in different slum localities which were settled because of the industrialization. However, later on the urban renewal projects and programs on poverty of the in 1960s again completed the circle, and that's how the practitioners again focused their attention on the people in neighborhood and communities, and they were giving direct services to the needy people. As we understood how community work practice started in UK and USA, now we will try to understand how this practice was also emerged in India. As we know that in India, social work profession formally, its education was started in 1936 with the establishment of Sir Dorabji Tata Graduate School of Social Work in Nagpada, Mumbai. So, in this time, the experience of working with slums in the Nagpada neighborhood in the city of Mumbai, the social work practitioners, those who are working in the Nagpada, they were also addressing the needs of the migrant people, those who were migrated from the different parts of Maharashtra because of the they came here for the employment opportunities. And that's how we can know presently that Sir Dorabji Tata Graduate School of Social Work, we can know as a Tata Institute of Social Sciences. Later on, Delhi School of Social Work, that another is one of the important institution established in 1946. Through these institutions, the social work graduates pass out, they were coming into the fields and they started working with different social groups. Till 1950s, there was no as such serious cognizance of community work was taken before that. And it was in the 1950s that the Department of Urban and Rural Community Development, we called as a URCD, is one of the specialization in social work which was established in the TISS in the 1950s. And through this specialization, social work graduates and the practitioners, they were trying to address the needs of the urban and rural poor. Through this process or in this era, it was only in the year 1951 that gave the massive importance to the community work practice or the community development initiative, the first of its kind in post-independent India. That one of the important project was launched by the government of India, and we called it as Community Development Program in 1952. Thereafter, community work in India was largely seen as a process of developing local initiatives, particularly in the areas of education, health, and agriculture development and livelihood. And this work was again undertaken by the social work practitioners or the community work practitioners to listening their needs with the available resources. And again, the major thrust was on motivating people to express their needs and to avail themselves or to connect themselves with the existing resources. So, since 1937 to till 1952, the community work in India was fairly dormant. And this was the time when the social work profession was in its infancy, and trainees were primarily observed as a case workers in a different settings. While community organization was being taught as a method of social work in different school of social work. So there were hardly any job opportunities which were provided avenues for the community practice, because there was no as such recognitions or the opportunities were available. Only in 1952, some of the opportunities only emerged with the launching of this community development program in India. And that's how the community work in India is largely seen as a process of developing local initiatives, particularly in the field of education, as we've seen that. And again, this community development process was defined as a movement and designed to promote better living for the whole community with the active participation of the local people. One of the known social work educators, Mukherjee, has described that the community development initiative as a process by which the efforts of people themselves are united with those government authorities to improve the social, economic, and cultural conditions of the communities, to integrate these communities with the life of the nations and to contribute fully to the national progress. That's how slowly the community development projects and these projects were facilitated or they contributed as the emergence of community organization as a method. Then the community organization was again designated to function effectively as the agency of progress and development with the following objectives. So, the idea of community development was to look after all the sections of society, to address their needs, to mobilize the resources, and to also mobilize the people for the purposeful action, to take particular care of the underprivileged class, and to also look after the entire process of well-being. And that's how the community development initiative further enhanced. The central idea was to seek the goods in their own villages and to look for the solutions to various social problems in their own neighborhood. In India, a variety of people were involved along with the social workers in the process of community work in rural areas. The health workers, education experts, agriculturalists, scientists, administrators, field workers, etc. Where all these people were the part of the team, and they were expected to work in a block which was the unit conceived as a community. The thrust of the community work in India remained largely uh, in rural areas. The nature of community work again did not become radical or more conflict oriented in the Indian context. The social workers, they started working in urban slums with the view to develop programs which could provide some relief to the poor. The conditions of massive literacy, lack of basic amenities, the problems faced by the women or the children, etc., have recently attracted large number of NGOs to work on these issues in these areas. And that's how again the many civil society organization NGOs, they are practicing direct community work uh, with the people at the grassroots. Even they were making collaborations with various stakeholders and addressing the macro level needs. So now we can understand how the community work again further in schools of community oriented approaches that could help the children with the problems in better manner. As we can see, under the Right to Education Act 2009, there is also provision of school management committee. Now the school management committee, basically there is a representation of the community people, and they were looking after the administration and the management, and the issues of the schools with the active involvement of the people. And that's how we can see how community engagement, or the people's participation was ensured with different laws in Indian context. Similarly, we can see the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. It's again a community driven program, with a large number of people's participation has been ensured to address the people's needs. So, now as we understood how community work practice developed in UK and in USA with the background of industrialization, and with the emergence of the different organizations which were established and formed, and they were addressing the needs. And similarly, in post independence era in India, the community development projects, that was the crux, and that was the one of the important milestone through which the community work practice, or community organization as a method of social work was established. And that's how in today's time, many organizations, NGOs, civil society organizations, they were they are mobilizing the community people. They are addressing their important needs and the issues, and through their active participation, the issues are being addressed for the larger well-being and their welfare, um, with with novel approaches. And that's how we can sum up this lecture. Thank you so much.